77 yards on the ground, second down, four, adding to it, stiff arming, keeping his balance. It's a foot race down the sideline, touchdown!
It's Hill. Taysom Hill picks up the Saints' first down, still going. Wow. Hill spins to the goal line. He's in. Touchdown.
All my haters mad, but I don't give a fuck. All my haters mad, but I don't give a fuck. My chopper hit. My chopper hit. My 40 hit. My 40 hit. I don't care if you let how I step. I don't care if you let how I rip. I don't care if you let how I step. I don't care if you let how I rip. I got sauce, I got flavor. Getting all this paper. I got sauce, I got flavor. Getting all this paper. Plain Jane Paddock on my motherfucking wrist. They notice every time when I walk up in this bitch. Post on walk up in this bitch. Keep my Glock up in this bitch. Post on walk up in this bitch. Keep my Glock up in this bitch. My chopper hit. My chopper hit. My 40 hit. My 40 hit.
Boy, do we have let's see if we got that. Should be better now. But yeah, we got some exciting USFL and XFL news going on here tonight. But I will say this. I am excited about this opportunity to have OBS Studio. Tomorrow, we're going to have the pre-draft special for the NFL. And then April 27th, we will have the NFL Draft Special. 2-year annual NFL Draft Special. Now, this is going to be exciting, folks. But I'm going to try to make it 15 minutes before the draft instead of an hour before the draft. Because, geez Louise, this is going to be a long night for us, you know. So, if you're willing to watch the NFL Draft, stick with it. Have fun with it. But let's talk about the XFL or USFL first before I get into the XFL, because XFL has been a little bit longer and I haven't really gotten to touch up the XFL. But let's start off with the USFL since it's easier to talk about the USFL. I gotta say this, as a fan base standpoint, I wasn't really impressed because of the fact that the teams are not playing at their home destination, their home location. I don't like that about the USFL. But I do like the competition, the level of competition that they have as a spring league, and the amount of players that are in this league is tremendous too. But we got to do better, fans. If you want this USFL to stay alive for a third consecutive year, You have to show up. You have to be there. You have to do what is necessary for the USFL to stay alive. The XFL is working right now. That's why they're still sticking around. So, USFL fans, do better. Or the USFL committee or the USFL president or whoever is in charge needs to have these teams play at home or away. Just like the XFL. The XFL is making it work. Why can't the USFL? And it's one of the main reasons why leagues go off and die, because you don't have a set home or away team. You just have a stationary home and away team. And what I mean by that is they're not exactly playing at home. They're just wearing their home jerseys at some different location. And that's just not going to fly, But I will say this. I was very impressed with the Birmingham Stallions as they took on the New Jersey Generals. Let me pull up the USFL scores real quick, and I will let you know what happened. All right, but let's go ahead and talk about the Philadelphia Stars and the debuting or the revamped Memphis Showboats. We haven't seen this group in quite some time, since the first iteration of the USFL. This game was pretty back and forth. It was more Philadelphia in the first half, and then Memphis came around in the second half. I mean, it was pretty competitive, and Philadelphia was able to stop them on fourth down, and they were able to win the game. And Philadelphia was one of those teams that made it to the playoffs last season, and they did pretty well. Time of possession was pretty damn even between the two teams. Pretty much even on the total plays as well. 58 for the Stars, 55 for the Showboats. I mean, this was a pretty good game for the most part. Let's see here. Red zone TDs. This is where we get things different. 4 red zone TDs for the Stars and 1 for the Showboats. Red zone attempts, they were 4 for 4, so 100%. So that's a good start for the Stars. Meanwhile, for the Showboats, they were 1 for 2 in red zone attempts. So that's not good for the Showboats. But total yardage, Philadelphia, they had less yards with 187, and the Showboats had 180 or 198. So the passing was tremendous by Philadelphia, 20 for 29. For Memphis, it was 100, or for 18 for 34. And the Stars had 3 passing touchdowns, and the Showboats had 2 passing touchdowns. And for rushing, Philadelphia had 94 and 24 attempts. That's not good. And Memphis had 21 for 97. It's a little bit better, but still not up there. Because you got Philadelphia almost at 4 yards a pop. And then you have Memphis at 4.6 yards a pop. They both have a touchdown each there. But Memphis turned the ball over with an interception. And this was just a good game all around. For passing wise, Cook has had a hell of a game. 20 for 29, 212 passing yards, 3 touchdowns, 0 interceptions, 124.5 QBR. I mean, this guy played last year for the Stars, and he did pretty well. And he's off to a hot start for the Stars. For the Showboats, you had 2 quarterbacks. White, who had 16 for 29, threw for 182 yards with 55% completion rating. Still better than Anthony Richardson, but 2 touchdowns, 1 interception, 82.6 QBR. And then Kelly came in 2 for 5, 40%, 16 yards, no touchdown, no interceptions, and 48.8. Now, Collins had a pretty decent game, and so did White when he was running the ball. Collins with 14 attempts, 63 yards, 4.5 yards per carry, 1 touchdown in that game. He was his sole touchdown for the Showboats in the rushing department. So then we'll look at the 2 receivers that caught the ball for the Showboats. Davis, who had 2 receptions, 75 yards, and 1 touchdown. He was targeted 3 times. McDaniel had 4 receptions, 44 yards, 1 touchdown, and he was targeted 6 times. But Collins was targeted 9 times, and he completed 5 times with 25 receptions. Now, the Stars, they had, in the rushing department, Cookus was actually the one that led the rushing yards. But Colburn had 5 attempts, 30 yards, and no touchdown for him. But Williams had 9 attempts, 11 rushing yards. Oh, my God, that's terrible. But he had 1 touchdown. But Gray came in, and he played like a star. He was targeted 9 times and caught 7 of those passes, 77 yards, 1 touchdown, and his longest reception was a 17-yard. But Coleman had a 35-yard reception. He was targeted 4 times, caught all those passes, and had 65 yards total. And then Roland, he had 3 receptions, 31 yards. He was targeted 4 times and had 4 touchdowns in that game. And then you had Colburn, the second, who had 2 receptions, 14 yards, 1 touchdown, and 4 targets. So, I mean, this game was kind of back and forth, but at the same time, the Showboats kind of shot themselves in the foot against the Stars. But it was a good win for the Stars, for sure. And it was a good start for both teams, but Memphis just fell short. Now, we're going to take a look at this game. I was actually really impressed with this team. You know, they get Scooby Wright coming back. You get all these players coming back for Birmingham. And some new faces for Birmingham. But you also had the Generals coming in, who was supposed to be a very tough team this year. But, man, the Stallions played fucking phenomenal in this game. They played like they were in championship form yet again. And I am very, very impressed with the way they handled the Generals' offense, you know. And look at this stat. Time of possession. They were 5 minutes ahead of the Stallions. They had 62 total plays, whereas the Birmingham Stallions had 49. Total yardage, they had 361 total yards. Whereas, well, Birmingham had 310. Yards per play, almost 6 yards. Stallions, over 6 yards. And what killed the Generals was the red zone attempts. And how many red zone touchdowns they had. 4 red zone attempts and 1 touchdown. For Birmingham, it was 1 touchdown and 2 red zone attempts. So it wasn't very pretty for either team in the red zone. But in the passing department was horrendous for New Jersey. Even though it was 17 for 30, still not good enough. 164 total yards, no touchdowns for the Generals, but Birmingham, whoo, they got some dogs on that offense. At quarterback, they had Smith and Magoo played excellent. I think Smith had a tremendous bomb down the field for a touchdown. And what was crazy was the defender must have forgot that this is NFL rules still for the USFL, that you have to touch him before he pops into the end zone. This guy caught the ball, and the defender looked like he wanted to play tag, but didn't want to play tag with him, and missed the fucking touch, and he was able to wheel his way in. And that was Watkins on a 61-yard reception. His only reception was a 61-yard touchdown, which was unbelievable. Thrown by Smith in that game. But after that, he just threw 10 for 15, 160 passing yards, 1 touchdown, 1 interception. And he had a 96.5 QBR, which isn't too bad. But Magoo had 7 for 11, 68 passing yards, 1 touchdown, and his QBR was 111.2. But Magoo was running the ball the most out of anybody, except for Marable. He had 6 attempts, 51 yards. His longest run was a 29-yarder, and he had the only rushing touchdown for the Stallions. And then Marable had 9 attempts for 24 yards. I was kind of disappointed to see Marable not be able to get out of the pressure from or the pursuit from the defense. But man, that Stallions defense is too good, man. But good win for the Stallions for sure, 27-10. Next game, we go to my Houston Gamblers, who continue to disappoint me as they take on the Michigan Panthers. And the Michigan Panthers, it looked like it was going to be a close game. At the half, it was actually 13-9. The Gamblers were on top of the Panthers, and then the Panthers just ran away with it. Looking at the box score, time of possession, it's pretty darn even, but Houston has about a minute and 10 minutes over the time of possession with 30-35, and Michigan had 29-25. And then you have total yards with 327 total yards for the Panthers, while the Gamblers had 194 total yards. That defense came to play in the second half. I can tell you that right now. Total plays, Michigan had 54 and Houston had 53. So that tells you the story right there. They had just about the same time of possession, same amount of plays, but Michigan had more explosive plays and more big plays at their disposal. But I could say this. The red zone wasn't too kind for Michigan, as they had 2 touchdowns for 4 attempts. Meanwhile, the Gamblers had 3 attempts for 2 touchdowns. So that's a win for them. But passing wise, you give it to Michigan Panthers. 237 total yards passing, 23 for 26, 3 passing touchdowns, and then you got Houston with 96 total passing yards, 13 for 22, and no touchdowns. I mean, that's just sickening right there if you're a Gamblers fan like myself. And then rushing, pretty much even rushing as well. 90 total yards, 26 attempts. Not very good, but 1 touchdown for the Panthers. And then 98 for 27 attempts. 2 touchdowns, still not that good. Turnovers. This is where Houston lost the game. Michigan had 1 fumble, but Houston had 2 fumbles and 2 interceptions in this game. It was horrendous. I could not believe how bad this game was for Houston. And we might want to take a look at Love and Strong here. Love, 18 for 20, 90% completion, 215 passing yards, 3 touchdowns, and a QBR of 151. That's impressive. And then you have Strong, who went 100% passing, 5 for 5, 34 passing yards, and his QBR was 95. So, and then Scott the third, he didn't really, if he had a couple more touches, I think he would have went over 100. 12 attempts, 61 yards, averaged out to 5.1 yards a carry. His longest run was a 17-yarder. So, yeah, he was about to hit 100 in this game if they would have gave him the ball more. 1 touchdown in this game for him. But Walker, the receiving department, Walker came in, 6 receptions, targeted 7 times, 105 reception yards, and 1 touchdown for him. Quinn, 3 for 3 target and receptions, 32 receiving yards and 1 touchdown, a 24-yarder. And then Ball comes in with 2 receptions out of 3 targets, 28 receptions, receiving yards, and 1 touchdown. So that offense is explosive when it comes down to it. Now, Bahar just shit. 13 for 22, 59.1% completion, 109 yards, 0 touchdowns, 2 interceptions, 34.1 QBR. Pledger was not that impressive. 16 attempts for 41 yards, 2 touchdowns, and his longest run was a 9-yarder. I mean, this was just horrendous for the Gamblers. That's all I'm going to say about the Gamblers in the Panthers game. Good job for the Panthers winning, and horrible job by the Gamblers. In last game, a revitalized Pittsburgh Maulers team who looks like the Pittsburgh Steelers or has the Pittsburgh colors, the black and gold, taking on a surprising team last year, but I think they might make a run this year. The New Orleans Breakers. This was a very interesting game. 9-9 at the half. Breakers came in and scored 6 points, and then Pittsburgh scored 6 points, and then New Orleans sealed the deal with 7 points to win 22-15. This was a very good game, I thought. But the Breakers had the time of possession that they needed to win the game, and they had 68 total plays to Pittsburgh's 47. Pittsburgh only had 156 total yards, and the Breakers had 332. Now, you might say that's a lot of yards, but per play, it's only 5 yards a pop. I mean, that's still pretty good, but for a Breakers team, you kind of expect them to get more yardage than that, especially against the Maulers team that was one and done, or had 1 win last season. But the Maulers, they just could not get into the end zone at all. So they were 0 for 3 in red zone touchdowns for red zone attempts. And then you had the Breakers, who surprisingly sucked in the red zone. 5 attempts for 1 touchdown. That's just fucking crazy to me. But in passing yardage, the Breakers have 270 total yards, while Pittsburgh, I guess you could kind of say you can kind of expect it for a Pittsburgh team. 72. I mean, Pittsburgh is built up as a running town, you know. So, but the passing was god awful in this game. 10 for 27, 23 for 41 for the Breakers, 10 for 27 for Pittsburgh. But the Breakers did have 1 touchdown in this game. But total yardage on the rushing, Pittsburgh wasn't that great, but they still beat the Breakers as far as total yardage for rushing. 84 total yards, while the Breakers had 62. So the Breakers are a more pass-heavy offense, I think. I think they worked better in the past, but the only turnover in this game was a Breakers fumble, so got to give it to the Maulers. They held on to the ball pretty well. They just need to come away with a victory, man. They need to make stops. But I don't really think there's very impressive stats for the Maulers for me to talk about. Maybe Reuben Foster. I mean, he came in and he had 9 solo tackles, 12 total tackles, and he played like a boss in this game. So I liked him in this game. And then for the Breakers, oh boy, Patel Thompson, he had a decent game. I'll say that. 23 for 41. He had a 56.1 completion percentage, 302 passing yards, 1 touchdown, no interceptions, 87.7. So it's good to have no interceptions in this game. And then Surratt, he didn't have a touchdown, but he had 5 receptions and he was targeted 9 times in this game. So 4 passes that could have been completed to him just didn't work out. Had 85 yards, no touchdowns, like I said earlier. But the guy who did have a touchdown was Jones, who was targeted 8 times. He had 6 receptions as long as it was a 14-yard, and that was a touchdown. So that's all I got for USFL. My thoughts on the USFL so far. I like the players. I like the teams. I like what I see out of them. The weakest team I could definitely see right now is Houston. The biggest team that I can see with a lot of improvement is possibly Pittsburgh or Memphis. Teams that I think is going to be a force, Birmingham and maybe Michigan. I think maybe Michigan and Birmingham might meet each other in the championship game this year. But that being said, I think this is going to be a fun year for the USFL. Just the fans need to show up, Either drop the ticket prices down or send everybody to Houston, send everybody to wherever the teams are. They need to be designated to that stadium. I don't know if it has to do with the XFL, with Houston Gamblers having some issues with the Roughnecks. I don't get it. So that's another story for another day, I guess, for the USFL. But we are going to talk about the XFL. Now, I haven't had a whole lot of time to talk about the XFL. I haven't had a whole lot of time to be on the podcast, to be honest. But I really enjoy what we have here in the XFL. So the XFL here, they're absolutely, tremendously a awesome fan base. Every fan base in the XFL, from the Brahmas to the Cacas, the Battlehawks, to the fucking Beer Snake in DC, to the Roughnecks, to the Sea Dragons, to the Vipers. I mean, this is what the USFL is lacking, is a great fandom, because they all have their designated locations. That's the problem with what's going on here for the USFL. Now, you have 2 teams so far that are already submitted into the playoffs. They already have home field advantage for their division. You got the Roughnecks, who are 6-3. They have home field advantage in their own division. Their only losses are to North teams, DC, Seattle, and St. Louis. Now you look over to the other side. You have DC, who has home field advantage. And honestly, if I'm the XFL, I consider putting the best team, kind of have like an NBA rule, like the best team has the home field advantage throughout the whole entire playoff. Since it's only 4 teams in this league, why have a central location? I don't quite get that. But at the same time, it's an experiment. I hope it works out, but we'll see what happens. But with that being said, I am just really excited to see what's going to happen for the XFL. So, with that being said, you got 2 teams that battled it out yesterday. St. Louis, not yesterday. Yeah, it was yesterday. Today's Monday. I forgot. But yeah, St. Louis and Seattle. You know, these two teams met in the second week of the regular season. I thought it was a fantastic game. You know, I have to open up my Dr. Pepper, by the way. Thank you very much. But it was a fantastic showing. It was a fantastic game, and it had a lot of crazy moments in that game. And a game-winning field goal kick by St. Louis, which then that was a turnaround for Seattle. They went on a 5-game win streak and met up with DC, but they barely lost to DC. So now they got to play against their rivals, St. Louis. I consider this a rivalry too. Like a friendly rivalry, not like the DC and St. Louis rivalry. That one's fucking nuts. But Seattle comes in to the Dome, pretty much the gateway to the West. Former Super Bowl town, have the Battlehawks, who have a chance to be in the playoffs. Seattle goes in there, goes into the Battlehawk Dome, and they silence the critics. I think Seattle has one of, or if not, the most talented team besides DC in the XFL. Now, why do you say that, TJ? I mean, just look at the roster. And also, Ben DiNucci has been on fire. He has been on fire. And then you got Josh Gordon on the outside. And you have Phillip Lindsay coming in. Then, what about their defense? What about their defense? Their secondary is a bunch of ball hawks. I am telling you right now, they are ball hawks, and they're impressive. So this last week is going to be interesting for both Seattle and St. Louis, because St. Louis has to win in order to get into the playoffs, because they still have a advantage over Seattle. Despite losing to them badly, they still have a one-game advantage over the Sea Dragons. Now the Vipers, we know they're out, but they've had heartbreaking losses. What a good way to go out on a victory. You know, I would love to see the Vipers to go out on a victory. You know, and they're one of those teams that they're not a bad team. They just couldn't not find a way to win. You know, and it's not an excuse for them. It's not saying that they're not a bad team, but I mean they still are 2-7 in this league, you know. And at some point in your career, you gotta realize, hey, we're better than this. We need to play as a team. You need to realize, okay, we could definitely win this game, but we're not winning our games, and we got to figure out why. It's too late now to consider playoffs. But for those guys, they are very, very, very upset that they're not going to be in the playoffs for sure. But I'm going to tell you something else. The South Division, I don't think there's any team that can beat any North team. The North teams could probably beat each other, but there's no South team that can actually beat a North team. Except for that one time where DC lost their first game of the season and their only game of the season to the one team that you wouldn't have thought that would beat them. And that was the last place team in the whole damn league. And that's the 1-8 Orlando Guardians. You know, I wouldn't watch them play against San Antonio. And they're not a bad team either. You know, and they were up 14-3 against the Brahmas. And the Brahmas came back and won. It's just that the Guardians have this thing where they have a momentum shift, and then they needed that momentum where they kept going and going and going against DC, and they beat DC. But man, Orlando and Vegas this year have been the heartbreak kids. Not breaking hearts, just being heartbroken. So it's sad to see a team like the Orlando Guardians and a team like the Vegas Vipers have really talented players on their team, just to go out there and lose and be 1-8 and 2-7 of the year. Man, that's got to be shitty, man. But Orlando, just like Vegas, they have a shot at winning a game that can boost their morale. But it has to be played at St. Louis, and they will take on the Battlehawks. Now, the Battlehawks just lost to Seattle. And this is very, very interesting here, because if you look at the standings real quick, the Battlehawks are still on top of the Sea Dragons. Main reason why, look at the division record. They're 3-3. Sea Dragons are 2-3. And if you look at head-to-head competition, you're going to say Seattle, because they beat them 30-12. But you have to look at the other division records. They lost to DC twice. So did St. Louis. But they still have one more divisional game, and that's against Vegas this week. So if Vegas shocks the world against this talented roster of Sea Dragons, that'll be crazy. But give me St. Louis to win and officially put themselves in the playoffs. It'll be I think it's going to be kind of close in this one. I think it's going to be like a -6.5, I'm going to say. But then we go to the Alamo Dome. Another team that's chasing the playoffs. The Brahmas. We thought this team was counted out at the earlier part of the season. Hines Ward, first time ever head coaching a team, brought this team 3-6. Pretty pivotal wins against Arlington, against Orlando twice. So that's the only teams they've beaten. They have the toughest team to prepare for in Reggie Barlow and the DC Defenders. This is going to be an interesting game, I think. But I'm sorry, Brahma fans. I have to go with the favorites on this one. I'm giving them a pretty significant push here. Give them 13.5, -13.5 against the Brahmas. Next up, we have the original Texas rivalry, the Houston Roughnecks, taking on the Arlington Renegades. Now, Arlington has to win this game in order to just seal the deal. But if they lose and San Antonio wins, San Antonio jumps them. This is very interesting here. And Houston already has home field advantage. So, Arlington's playing them at home. If they beat Houston at home, then they get to play them at Houston, riding on momentum. I don't think Arlington's going to beat Houston. I just don't see it. Give me -8 on Houston. I think Houston's going to win. They're going to be 7-3, and they're going to be looking for that championship. Not just a 2020 claimed undefeated championship, but a championship. An actual hoist the belt. And last but not least, a game that is very important for both St. Louis and Seattle. This is going to be hard, because this could go back and forth. The Vipers, they're a very tough team, I think, but I think Josh Gordon and Ben DiNucci do it again. I think the Sea Dragons win, but I think it's still going to be close. I think it's going to be -2.5 for the Sea Dragons in this game. Give me the Sea Dragons winning by -2.5. But with that being said, I am now officially, let's see. So I went 3-1 last week, okay? I am sitting at a, let's see. Okay, I have 6 losses in the XFL. 6 losses in 9 weeks. So 30-6. That's, actually no, I have 5. So 31-5. So I'm 31-5 in the XFL. That's very impressive, by the way. Especially for not knowing what these teams were going to be capable of in the beginning of the season. I went undefeated for 4 weeks and then finally dropped the ball on some picks. You know. And Seattle was the first team to prove me wrong. So there you go. But I fairly enjoy the XFL a whole lot. I just hope that the USFL can match the XFL in the next couple weeks, or I'm definitely going to end up losing interest because you got to have fans and not have COVID fans. You know what I mean? I fucking hate the sound effects. I fucking hate all that shit. I'm really excited to see what is going to come out for the XFL and the USFL. I can't wait to see the XFL championship game, which will be live in San Antonio, May 13th. I don't know if I'm going to be able to do that based on my job that I have outside of the PMP. Just going to have to depend on my schedule. And then we're going to focus on the pre-draft special tomorrow, which will be at 8 o'clock tomorrow night. And then next week, we'll move on to Thursday for the second annual NFL Draft Special. I cannot fucking wait for that. I can't wait to cheer on my boy Bijan Robinson going to the Dallas Cowboys. And then laughing and pointing at all of you guys that laughed at me and said there's no fucking way that anybody would go after fucking Anthony Richardson in the first pick, but the fucking Carolina Panthers do so. I think Carolina is going to end up picking this guy from Florida. I really do think so. But with all that being said, I just would like to thank the PMP fans, the Mafia fans, the Mafia members. I'd like to thank my co-host, my partner, who will be back. I don't know if he'll be back tomorrow, or he will definitely show up for the NFL Draft Special. But I would like to thank Caleb, for even showing up on this podcast. Without him, this wouldn't have been possible for me to do this with confidence, you know. And then some other guys I got to thank. Booby Miles for coming on twice. Coach Eric Martin, who does OMW recruiting. I want to thank him for that. I also want to thank the Gridiron 64 podcast guys. Those guys made this possible, believe it or not. They gave me the spark, the idea that I could do this, you know. So Gabriel Trevino, Tony Pena, all those other guys from Pirates Cove podcast from down here in South Texas. I appreciate you guys for giving me the confidence to do this. I also want to thank DJ Lil King for also coming on here and also really guiding me on how to do this OBS shit. You know, I wouldn't have understood this from the get-go. So this is pretty awesome to have, and seeing it on my screen, on my phone screen, on YouTube. It's pretty cool. I mean, it's weird that I'm the only one watching right now, but there's going to be people later on that are going to be watching this. I just need to put in the hashtags in the description and all that bull honky. So, I also want to thank my family for being a part of my life and accepting me to do this, and without them, I wouldn't have had the confidence to even talk, and I am really excited for this next year, not only for the PMP, but for my baby sister. She's gonna be graduating this coming up year. This coming up school year, not this year, but the following year. And she is a smart girl. I'm not gonna lie, I was lazy in school. So if your kids are watching this, God forbid if they do, it's horrendous. This is a horrendous show with me just talking. Stay in school, study, and don't be fucking lazy. And I also want to just thank the community that do watch this, but aren't fucking subscribed. Thank you for watching this amazing podcast. And I want to thank the people that actually jump on the live chats. Thank you guys for jumping on. Until then, we are the greatest podcast in all of YouTube. We are the PMP. Thank you, everybody, for watching for tonight. I am your host, TJ Riddell. So long and ta-ta for now.